Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. Today I thought I'd start a series on education, and I think it's the right time of year to talk about this. So I wanted to start by first congratulating everyone who is going through that whole graduation process right now. I know that a lot of people have worked very hard to get to where they are, and you either graduate from high school or perhaps college or even, some sort of upper level, master's degree or doctorate. And what I'm going to say to you, and I'm sure you've heard this, from other people, is this is the beginning of a journey. And, in my view, education isn't a stopping, but it's more of a journey. It's a place that you're going. So one of the things I would like to spend a few sessions on is talking about education and how that it plays out as far as it relates to a few areas. Now, because this is a business show, we're going to talk a little bit about tax credits. We're going to talk about education deductions and savings incentives, and that'll really be our starting point for the series. But we're also going to get into a discussion of student loans. A lot of people don't understand the different types of student loans, and I have a lot of parents, or clients of children who are getting ready to go to college or in college, and they just don't have a good grasp on all of this. A lot of them will know, hey, I got to figure out this FAFSA form, and they'll call me or they'll ask me questions while they're getting their taxes done or do some accounting work and talk about the FAFSA. But I really want to spend some time talking about student loans and the different types of loans and the advantages of each. Then we're going to talk about something which I think most parents are going to want to spend some time thinking about, and that is grants and scholarships. We're going to talk about some of the programs that are out there. What are some things you can do to help pay for college instead of, relying on getting student loans or relying on, borrowing money. And then finally, we're going to wrap up this series on 529 plans. And this is an area where a lot of people have heard of a 529 plan or a education savings plan, but not a lot of people are aware of the nuances of those. So I hope this series is something that will be beneficial to you. Share it with people who are getting ready to go through the process, who are in the midst of going through the process. So let's jump right in. Now, so you've decided that you're going to go to college, and now you've got to decide, okay, well, how am I going to pay for this? And that's why I want to spend some time talking about some of the tax credits. So we're sort of starting, with the idea that you've already gotten into school, you've already decided on where you're going to go, you've decided on, where you're going to go. So let's talk about some of the credits. Well, there's really two credits. There's the American Opportunity Credit, and there's the Lifetime Education Credit, or Lifetime Learning Credit. Pardon me for misspeaking on that. Let's dive right into it. So the American Opportunity Tax Credit is the major student tax credit available. This was set to expire at the end of 2017, but was permanently extended through the extended legislation passed by Congress. So this was a good thing. This was the old, what they called the HOPE credit. It's a modified replacement for that HOPE credit. It was created under the American Recovery and Investment Act. So this is a thing that we thought was going to actually go away, but it's something that was continued, which has been a good thing for students and people who are going for an education. So let's talk about the eligibility for that. Well, the student must be enrolled at least half time in the program leading to a degree, certificate, or other recognized educational credential for at least one academic period during the tax year. Okay, now what else does it mean? The student has not completed the first 4 years of post-secondary education. So this is off the plate for graduate students. So if you're a graduate student, this isn't going to work for you. The credit amount of this particular credit is up to $2,500 of the cost of tuition, fees, and course materials paid during the taxable year per eligible student. So one of the things that people need to keep in mind is that, let's say you have a family and you've got several children, maybe they're all going to college at the same time. May not be a great situation for you to be in financially, but you can take these credits for each child. So it's not cut off as like $2,500 for one, it's $2,500 for each. Now, these credits are taken by filling out the IRS form 8863. Now, one of the things that they made mandated this year was to claim the American Opportunity Credit, you must provide the Educational Institution's Employer Identification Number, EIN, on this form 8863. So a lot of people will say to me, well, Ralph, how do I get that information? And it's funny when people will come in to get their taxes, I'll say to them, well, did you have any education expenses? Oh, yeah, my daughter's at the University of Delaware. I said, well, did she give you the form that you needed? And they look at me like a deer in the headlights. And I have to explain to them, well, there's actually a form that the IRS came up with. It's called a 1098-T. This is something that you should receive from your educational institution. Now, I will tell you, you may have to press your children to go onto their online account with the school and get this form for you. Now, let's talk about the refundability of this credit. And what that means is even if you have no tax obligation, a portion of this credit is what's called a refundable credit. So you get that money back, and it's 40% of the credit up to $1,000 is refundable. That means you can get the refund even if you don't owe any tax. Now, one of the negative sides to this particular credit is there are some income limitations. So if you are a single taxpayer, then the income limitation is $80,000 or less. Now, if you're married, it's $160,000. So, that's something that you want to take into mind because you may not qualify for it because of your level of income. So that's something to consider. Now, this can be received for 100% of the first $2,000 in tuition plus 25% of the next $2,000 as in paid during the taxable year for tuition, required fees, and course materials. Now, what's not covered in this, or what they call ineligible expenses, you cannot receive a credit for room and board, insurance, transportation, expenses paid with tax-free assistance, medical expenses, expenses used for another deduction or credit, and student fees that are not required as a condition of enrollment or attendance. So you need to take into mind, what you can use this for. And I will tell you, for the most part, what information is provided on the 1098-T is really the best starting point for that. Now, if you don't qualify for the American Opportunity Credit, the next credit is the Lifetime Learning Credit. Now, you cannot claim both of these. You can only claim one or the other for a particular year for a particular student. Now, you can claim the American Opportunity Credit for the same student for no more than 5 years. There is no limit on the number of years with the Lifetime Learning Credit. So this is really the credit that people who are in graduate school will use. The other benefit to this is it has a lower income, maximum income limit in order to remain eligible. And that's why, this is a helpful credit that you may qualify for. Now, to be eligible, the student does not need to be pursuing a degree or other recognized educational credential. The credit is up to $2,000 of the cost of tuition, fees, and course materials paid. You determine your eligibility by using that same form 8863. Now, this credit is not refundable, so you have to have taxable income in order to qualify. Now, there also is school eligibility, things available for all years of post-secondary education and for courses to acquire improved job skills. This does not need to be an accredited institution. So this, Lifetime Learning Credit really opens up and some opportunities for you. How funny is that? That you can get this credit if you don't qualify for the American credit or if you've already had 4 years of college. So in our next session, we're going to talk about, tuition and interest deductions as well as the tax credit for paying tuition.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.